and welcome to a very special lockdown episode of Slash Dupe, the mysterious movie pitching podcast. With me I have our co-host and producer Dan.
Hello.
And our resident dupe and co-producer Ryan.
Hey everyone.
And I'm Sean, the co-host and creator of Slash Dupe. I think it's probably worth noting, it's been a while since our last recording, both our last recording and the last thing that we put out. And I think it's probably worth noting why. The lockdown's been interesting in the UK particularly, and I have to be honest with you, I found it a struggle for the first couple of weeks. I did find it sort of difficult to find a balance and a rhythm, and I'm sort of fortunate and unfortunate enough to be locked down with a partner, with my fiance. So at least I have company, so I can only imagine what it must be like if you're sort of locked down and isolated in a place where you're not able to see family and friends. But that comes with its own set of challenges. And what's strange about it is that before the lockdown, and of course we're in a very fortunate position. I'm very blessed that my job remains and my family is safe and secure. But I do think it's worth noting that I found it difficult when my routines changed. So despite the fact that it sounds from the outset that it's a fantastic thing to be off work and to be in, given no reason to have to go out and see people and have to go to the pub and have to go and do things, for me, for a nerd like me, it sounds like heaven. But actually the routines change. There's lots of new anxieties that come into place. And I think that whilst I would have loved to have kept outputting content at the same rate, and we were really proud of what we were doing and really working hard to keep our deadlines and everything, I feel like it just had to take a back seat while I think most of the country, to be fair, and most of the world just sort of readjusted to where we're now at.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I was in a similar place. I'm very lucky to be locked down with my family, which again brings its own set of challenges in terms of constant attention from my little one, and how you work the whole homeschooling thing alongside everything else that's going on. It does mean I get wonderful quality time with them, which actually I'm really grateful for. But for me also, I'm in the creative industries, and so obviously overnight all of my work disappeared, which was extraordinarily scary. And I know I'm not the only person that's had to sit through that, and I've been very, very lucky that one of the colleges I teach at has allowed me to start online lessons with their students, which is going really, really well, and has taken the sort of the anxiety away from keeping the roof over my head. But for a few weeks, it was really scary, and I think, like you say, it's very hard to prioritise. Everything's changed, and it's trying to find a way through. And we're all doing as well as we can, I think. And so, yeah, we were talking about the fact that about a week and a half ago, I had a Slash Dupe injection where obviously I was feeling high, and we kind of contacted each other about that, and then that sort of died to the wayside as I started this online team.
Yeah. Then I found a well of time to contact everyone and get busy, and then I found everybody else had dried up.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that is everyone's cycle. Well, not everyone's, but a lot of people that I've spoken to cycle, which is that you're allowed to feel productive a couple of days, and then you're allowed to just sit in your pants, eat Haagen-Dazs and wonder where the world's gone for a couple of days. And I don't think either of those things are inherently wrong.
No.
It's been really interesting seeing the output of a lot of creative people, and interestingly, the creativeness of people that might not have even dubbed themselves creative people beforehand within this lockdown. Really interesting. You can't buy a webcam or a decent microphone anymore because everyone's streaming
either.
You can't get hold of resistance bands are all in.
Exactly.
Resistance bands, that's the way. So yeah, and I think I'm sad, like you, that we had to change. We had a really good thing going, really good sort of
momentum
system going. We had it was really nice, and we were really enjoying that. And we just started going, which I feel sad for that in terms of us, but and for our listeners who are obviously enjoying our work at that time, I hope. And so it's nice to be doing something, I think. and finding a new way through for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, doing something. Yeah, I completely understand.
I just miss the gym, man. I miss like pushing plates. I miss sort of, but there is a social aspect to it. I found myself in quite a weird position. I basically left my job back in December of 2019, so I sort of got used to being at home before the lockdown sort of happened, and then picking up a couple of contracts here and there, and then those died out. So I've adjusted quite well. I've sort of felt like I was already adjusted back in December, but the way that I've adjusted, and I think is really important, I tell everybody this, is just be checking in with friends and family and having, if you have like a quiz or, we as a group, we play Dungeons and Dragons together and that's once a week. And it has made all of this so much more bearable to be able to have something to do and be able to join a community of people where you can just chat. And I think, Dan, as you said, you can't buy a webcam, can't buy a mic, because the content of like the memes and everything has been so good because we're all sort of banding together and letting the opportunity for something creative to come out. And it's just been fantastic.
I think I've spoken to friends and family more in the last 8 weeks than I have in the last sort of 8 months. So
Definitely.
There's definitely positives from that.
My nan's got to know all of her neighbours, and I'm not just talking about the one to the left or the one to the right or the ones that she's known for 60 years. It's she's getting to know them all, and I'm getting to know them all when I sort of deliver her groceries from the doorstep. So yeah, I think this is an incredibly unique time, and I think for anyone out there, and ourselves included, it's okay to have a unique reaction, and whatever that reaction is to you, it's sort of, I think one of the key things for me is not to feel like there's anything wrong with you for how you feel, because it's a unique time.
Spot on.
And so with that in mind, we thought very long and hard, because we had plenty of time to do so, as to why we would bring this back.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I don't have a kid, so plenty of time. But we thought very long and hard as to why we would be bringing this back during the lockdown. Why would we be doing this? And I, for one, I get my news from a variety of different sources, but I don't get it from the news because I find that's something that sort of stresses me out quite a lot. So I find it quite interesting. I get a little bit from the internet. I get a little bit from my friends, a little bit from my family, and and some of the channels and some of the TV you watch. Some of these late night satirists have sort of got some interesting content being delivered on YouTube now, and you sort of piece it all together. And you get an idea of what's going on, and I think there's sort of widespread. There are lots of new terms being thrown out there. There's lots of reasons to, lots of things for concern, lots of phrases for concern, things that might not have worried you before worry you now. And I think for me, I wanted to gain ownership over these phrases that we hear all the time. I wanted to gain rid my fear and my anxiety of these phrases and these things that people say to you when they say to you just in passing because they've heard something on the news or they know something you don't about some information. They give it to you, and it's I want to love all of the things I hear, and I know that sounds like a strange thing, but because what we do in SlashDupe is we take a title and we and somebody goes home and they explode it to how their own worldview and who they are, and they come back from their own, in their own artistic influences and creative influences, and they come back to us with something from their imagination that is not even remotely. I mean, if you've been listening, it's not even remotely like what anyone else's ideas are like. So I wanted to think about the millions of people that see these words everywhere in the news, like isolation. And what does that mean to them? They'll see that word and it will mean something different to them as it will to someone else. And it might engender comfort or it might engender anxiety. So I thought for this special lockdown isolation episode of SlashDupe, the three of us could have come together with a title each, which is slightly different to the format that we normally do. A different title that is a word that has been popular in the media, associated with COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and we could take that word out of context and give it a new context. Give it something that was, maybe just allow us to, yes, we're isolated, but can we take that isolation and change it into something positive or something unique? And hopefully we can try and do that with 3 key words that we've heard in the media or seen in the media recently.
Love it.
So we're going to begin our Slash Dupe special lockdown episode with something that we don't normally do, and I'm going to go first because the reason why I normally go last, is a bit of insider information for you, is that I go last because my idea is normally the worst, or I think it's probably the worst, and I don't do Slash Dupe so I can pitch my ideas. I just love hearing everybody else's ideas.
You've heard my ideas, right?
They're bad, but they're bad in an entertaining way. Mine are just offensively bad. That's what I'm more worried about. So I do them last so we can cut them out if they're glorious, pitch some other people and you can just get rid of mine. But this time I'm going to go first, and I'll tell you why I'm going to go first, because I have only the concept, and I really mean it's not a log line, it's just a concept, and I'm hoping that everyone else can flesh it out for me. So I don't know if it's worth giving everybody all of our titles now and letting them know what's coming up, or whether we should leave it a mystery before...
however it goes, however you feel it.
I think each person should introduce their own.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. And I'm going to say that my title is Key Workers. So I've taken the phrase key workers.
We didn't know this either.
Yes, I didn't tell you guys, in case you wanted it, instead of the ones I gave you, instead of the ones we came
it's all good.
Together. So mine's key workers, and what I've decided, obviously we know what key workers are. They're all the people in the NHS, the people who are, our mailman. You know, I thank my mailman every day. He delivers the stuff. Like sometimes it's stuff I don't need or don't want, but that's, but I thank him for delivering it because, like, these things must go on. The rubbish men, the shop workers, the sort of, they're doing amazing work, and other key workers as well, care homes and stuff like that. The thing is, some of the things you don't normally hear about.
Prison officers,
exactly. Yeah, my friend's mum's a prison officer, and they don't have a lot of the same sort of support that you would imagine that they have, but they still have to be going and doing their jobs, and TFL and so on. So key workers is a valuable, but it's a new phrase. It's something new. I mean, of course we know these people are key workers. I mean, I would argue that people on the farms, of course, they're key workers as well. Farm workers are key workers. But it's a new phrase, the word key workers. I've never heard it before this pandemic. But I thought, let me take this out of context. What is key workers if I saw this on Channel 4, let's say? And it would be a post-pandemic comedy, and it's key workers, but it's spelt Quay.
Love it, of course.
And it's, of course, and it would be like an attempt at doing a sitcom, but about all of the jobs that you would find on a quay, right?
Right.
Sort of, and that's it. I could have rambled, right? I was going to ramble.
But you've left it there.
And see if I could find some things in the depths of, that when you get the fear and you realise you're talking and you don't have anything to say, and you have a 50-50 chance that you're going to pull out some gold, or you might pull out some sludge. So anyway.
Nice. I see what you did there, sludge.
I would say to begin with, but Dan and Sean, can you list as many key worker jobs that you might think would happen on the piers, and on the quays?
No.
Yes, which is exactly why I left it hanging, because I suddenly started to think, well, apart from the fact that I thought of this a few days ago, I haven't actually researched what the things you might find on a quay, except that you have the container ships come in, don't you? You have the container ships, you have...
About the kid that scrapes barnacles off the underneath of...
There you go.
Or like a duo, not creepy, but like a... crackpot duo of like a father and a son that go and like take all the barnacles off the bottom of boats.
A father-son barnacle scraping team. Yeah.
So my wife's father owns a boat, and so we have been on the
flex,
boat.
But okay.
Yeah, I know. Very, very
humble
weird,
brag.
right? Yeah, humble brag. When we talk about boats, the Jenny Wren is a humble 30-footer, I think, or something. It's a beautiful thing that's been handed down through the family, but it takes more work. They spend more time doing up the boat than they do sailing in the boat these days.
Right.
The maintenance and the keys. And so we've been to a couple of marinas with this boat. The dream was, when we were going to get married, is that we were going to do a boys' trip. Boys, let's.
Yeah.
On the boat from Britain to Calais, go and buy all the wine for the wedding, and then sail back.
Yeah.
That was going to be the cool thing we never did, to be honest. So I've visited a couple of marinas, and the marinas are all very different. So I wonder whether there's something in that, whether it's one particular, so like airport, where it's all the characters in a small marina. So there's like shops and toilets, and then there's like say the maintenance areas, the maintenance space, but there's all the people on the boats. So and there are a lot of people on those boats that just leave the boats in the marina and just like sleep on it and do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And they'd be all from different walks of life, and all the boats would be different as well, wouldn't they? And sort of what they go to do, if the boats are for sailing for pleasure, or sailing for profit, or sailing for tourists, or sailing to, to catch fish
pirates.
or pirates, which have to be...
Are we in the 1600s in this one?
Well, I'm sure
no.
the word pirate still applies to
in Somalia.
Well, people that are just shifty boat owners.
Can't see it in Portsmouth myself, but
But so
maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so good. I'm glad this has got more. I'm going to say the word legs. There's not a pun in there, obviously. Sea legs, but this has more. There's not.
So what are we looking at genre-wise? Are we looking at sort of Little Britain end of ridiculous humour? Are we looking like is it This Country or Our Country, which that really cool
Well,
one?
see, that's the other spectrum. That's a very, very good show, isn't it? Sort of reaching off of the sort of The Office's style, sort of verite documentary style. So that's a great show. It's too good for this idea. The title. It's too good for the title. Key workers, isn't it? And on the other spectrum, I don't want to be discussing anything to the quality of Little Britain. So I think it falls somewhere. Have you seen Crashing by Phoebe Waller-Bridge? So it's like...
Well, if we're talking Phoebe Waller-Bridge, it's already good, right?
Well, you would think so. And listen, I'm not trying to slate Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I'm not sure if Crashing came out before or after Fleabag, but they're very different shows, right? So I think... So Fleabag, it does something different with the form. It plays around with the fourth wall, and it sort of says something very strong about... I mean, I know 10 Fleabags, like, it's such a fantastic character, like, that you've not really been seen before on TV, but men and women like that. Definitely. Living in Buckinghamshire, definitely. Anyway, yeah, so Fleabag obviously has that sort of... obviously it's as good as it is, but Crashing is very different. Crashing is set in a hospital, but it's like a sort of dilapidated hospital.
The Guardians, living Guardians.
Yes, exactly. So they're Guardians that they're paid to sort of... or they charge cheap rent in order to look after a sort of building while it's in sort of
But
flux.
the rule is they can kick you out at any point if they want to.
Yes, yeah. So it attracts a certain class and a certain type of people, and that makes for a good sitcom. But it's a very Channel 4 sitcom. So whilst... so this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying anything disparaging against our new queen, future queen, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, of course. Long may she reign. But Fleabag is a very BBC comedy, very sort of like, and then Crashing is a very Channel 4 sitcom. So I think they're very, very fundamentally different. So I think this falls on that side of things.
Well, I sort of got the feeling like it was like that workaholic style comedy. That's the way, like a sort of a shorter ensemble cast of people that have different personalities, and then you get all the other characters around them.
I like that, and that's possibly better. So it's more of like a slacker comedy.
Yeah,
I like that
because I mean, think about the amount of people who took summer jobs, working like lifeguards and doing those sort of things for whatever reason. You could have that similar thing. A lot of people go sailing during the summer, so those jobs are seasonal. I know I've met a couple of guys traveling. A guy works on an old tall ship, and he goes sailing, and then wherever he docks, he spends a month on holiday there. And when they're ready to depart, he jumps back on the ship and then goes. So. As you said, there's many different kinds of people, and I sort of saw it focused around a group, like one summer of like a group of people, and that's when you get the sailors coming into the quays and everything.
So is it going to be a key of repute, like people of positive repute? People are going to go, oh wow, you've got to go to this place in Cornwall, it's beautiful, or is it going to be some sort of dingy, rickety sort of harbour, and it's going to be sort of unappealing, but it's the people make it vibrant, or is it going to be a place that is interesting and beautiful and brings people in?
Is it a real place? Or are we creating this place?
I think if it's a real place, it's more likely. I mean, if you were to see it in a TV show, its humour would come out of it being a real place, wouldn't it? Like, so the person who wrote it or made it would have come from a key like that.
Okay.
You know, a place with a key like that.
Okay,
So it should be a real place, but I don't know any keys or anything in the country, so I can't really weigh in on this. I should have done a bit of research.
I cannot remember her name, but it's the girl. It was the girl, the Greek comedian, English Greek comedian, with her brother, and her brother,
Dimitriou.
Yeah. So you could set it in the Greek islands and have those two as your main characters, boy and girl.
Yes, they're both fantastic. She was in What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes,
TV
the
show
English one,
recently. And he was in the
Was it White Gold? No, Stanlet Flats.
Stanlet's Flats. Yeah, that was brilliant. And they're a brother sister. But I haven't seen them do a lot of work together. But they're a brother sister of Greek descent.
Right.
And so that would be interesting. Yeah, like a Greek.
So it's
key.
A lot of people do go around the Greek islands when they sail.
Interesting,
so
but
you
it's
have
like a
Greek
real
key.
ramshackled version. So they go there expecting the brochures show it being amazing.
Love it,
Come work
but
at this
it's
key.
not.
It's a beautiful place, and they get there and it's a rut putty, run down.
The
horrible
family,
place.
the family key.
Yeah.
Here's another thing
That's
that's
a
going to
better
make people
title,
think I'm a different class than I am. My parents went on a Greek sailing holiday one summer.
Oh,
And
right.
they went with a bunch
Okay.
of friends. This is like both sides of my family are sailing. If you'd ever met any of them, listeners, they on. Well, actually, my wife's side are very big sailors. Her grandpa was in the Navy and stuff like that. That's probably where that came from. But my mum and dad, not what you'd call typical sailors. But they went on a Greek sailing holiday with one of their friends who was, and it's amazing. They go on these big fleets and stuff, and so they all stick together. All the tourists stick together, and they pull up. So there's the opportunity for a whole bunch of tourists to come around on this Greek sailing island. Maybe there's some kind of deal between the quay's owner and this sort of this sailing guide, like where you get some money for bringing all these tourists to the quay.
Maybe she's the owner of the sort of the quay or some sort of proprietor or something. I don't know how it works. The matron of the quay.
Dockmaster.
And yeah, something like that. And he is the tour guide. So he would sort of pretend like he doesn't have anything to do with her when anyone else is around.
Love it.
And sort of pretend like they don't know each other. But when
they
they're together,
blatantly
obviously-
do because
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
quite always looked at. Yeah, I love it. And they got the same
Yeah.
surname and everything, but and they even introduce themselves with the same surname, but they pretend that they don't.
They pretend they don't know each
Oh,
other.
it's just one of those names on the island, you know.
Yeah, and they
It's
blame
like
everybody
Smith.
for being racist when they think, exactly, when they think that they're related.
Another bit of interesting, fun seafaring fact that one of my friends ended up being a actor for a immersive reality theatre piece that a big Russian person took out on one of his super yachts, where for a week and a half or 2 weeks they had to pretend to be vampires. And they did like
That's
this whole
wicked.
interactive theatre. So during the day they were like crew and they were just there helping with this stuff, and then they'd turn into vampires at night. And when they pulled up at various beaches or whatever, and this Russian family, like literally paying for his friends and family to have this interactive vampire
That's
scenario.
fantastic.
Amazing.
That's another level, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
And,
I mean,
and
that's
Key
gonna-
Workers After Dark.
Yeah, like Hollyoaks After Dark.
That's like the web series. That's the web series that gets
Yes,
made.
exactly. Yeah, when it's canned after one series, which it definitely will be.
Well,
And
I mean,
like,
that's the kind of thing that could happen, isn't it? Like we get these big things pull into this slightly rickety, not well known, so that the Russian family don't get spotted. You know, pulling into when they're doing this interactive. It's like a big deal that it's going to happen, and that's quite cool. I like that.
and he's always wanted to be an actor, so he gets a part in it, and he feels like, but actually all they're making him do is like you said about being deck crew, is like they're just making him do all of the work and telling him that he's a big part and he's going to be a vampire in it or whatever, and really he's just going and he's just cheap labour for this you know, this yacht or whatever, this voyage.
The scene
And
where
then
he
he's
finds
canned
out.
afterwards.
The scene where he finds out that is when they send him to the galley and he has to cut garlic, and he's like, "Wait, hold on a minute."
Yeah, he sort of turns to the camera and goes, "Hang on a minute, if I'm acting and as a vampire, why am I doing this?" And he points the cloves of garlic up the screen. I love it. All right, so we've decided it definitely has to have this documentary crew following them around, right? So we're gonna lean into that.
Okay.
And now it's actually turned into a good comedy. I think
we've stepped up a level.
I wanted it to be a terrible one, but I think actually, I think it's gone up a level. I think that's fantastic. I love it.
So who are other actors? They're going to be. You've worked out your leads. Are there going to be other reoccurring people and characters, and who might play them?
We're going to have Richard Ayoade in it, obviously.
Of course.
He's got to be in it.
It's not a real sitcom if he's not in it.
No, and he's and I can say this being a person of interesting and mixed descent myself, but he is of interesting and mixed descent. And I don't quite know from where. I'm sure it's written down somewhere on the internet.
Joe Gilgan from Brassic, the sort of... I think he'd be quite good as like...
his name. Is he the Irish bloke?
Yeah,
yeah.
As like a sort of... he could be like a holiday. You know the people that like come back horrible orange because they spent all day, like the sort of expats. He could be like the expat living out there on the island, and and that's how he gets to know people. And he's like a proper geezer.
Yeah, he's been living
like,
there for a long, long time, and he's always talking about like sort of he hates all the immigrants and stuff.
And he's got that permanent glasses tan line. That permanent glasses tan line.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, he'd be good. He'd be really good.
What about Simon Bird from The In-Betweeners as like the woman's boyfriend?
Yes.
Or something?
And he's just useless. Like, one of these sort of not rude, just, or aggressive, but just useless. These people that you're like, well, why are you going out with them?
Everything he does is just...
Yeah, everything he does, is just bad. And you almost sort of don't know... I used to work with someone like this, but you don't know if they're doing it on purpose because they're so bad at everything. But when you confront them on it, they're sort of so... Almost like a bird has come in and tried to do a job, like a little robin redbreast has come in to try and do a job. Of course it's not going to know what it's doing. It doesn't know what a computer is, it's just floating around. So you can't really be mad at it, but you're just not quite sure why it's so bad at everything.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, that's a great character to have as a boyfriend, and
especially if she's quite fierce and able to she's holding it together because the brother is just a chancer, desperately trying to make some money out of
to get a different job every time someone new comes to the keys.
Exactly.
She's trying to jump ship, literally. Yeah, definitely.
And she's like, it's a family business, and like she's inherited it from their dad, and like, is Dad still alive? Is he just older now and like he's just passed it on? Does he
now,
come
my
down?
only problem with him being alive is that he's alive in Staff Lets Flats. He's alive in that, and he's based on their real dad. They're they Greek,
right.
very strongly, very sort of strictly Greek dad, whereas they're quite English,
Okay.
Quite British. But so I wouldn't want to lean on that
so
too hard.
he's not alive in this, but maybe the mum is, and she keeps coming down and bemoaning how. It's not running as well as it should, and she's like, and then every time she remembers her dad, she like bursts into tears because she's still grieving for. It's been 10 years, Mum. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And she's and she's with her new husband. She's with her new husband, but she's always crying.
Yeah, and he's always awkward about it because he doesn't really know. Every time she's so sad, you can just see him go through a complex range of emotions.
So on the flip side of that, the reluctant landlord, which is I can't remember his name.
Ramesh
Ranganathan's TV show, sort of loosely based on his life as well, and that it has that dynamic where his dad isn't there, and the mum always comes along, and she is like a caricature of his actual mum.
Yeah.
So it's sort of weird that the two different shows split that, but it works well in both of them.
Or we just eschew that, and we have we have
just
a very
business.
old, like the only person remaining in the family is like a great grandparent that they don't even know if they're related to them. Because they can't speak to them properly because they're so old. They're like they don't know how old the person is. So they're like, well, we think she's 120, but we don't know. And she won't, like, they don't ever really know. She's always just around, this grandma, or his great grandma, and none of the rest of the family is, and they sort of don't explain why. They're just like, it's just the great grandma. How old is she? She doesn't talk, but she's very intelligent. These old people that, again, maybe it's something about these people that, like, they know everything that's going on, but they know that by just pulling back a bit and maybe pushing on the I'm old, I can't do anything, then life is so much easier for them.
I'm looking forward to that stage in life.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure whether the brother and the boyfriend would get along, because I always like to think, well, you have the traditional sitcom dynamic, but then how can you make that either perhaps more realistic? Like, what would actually happen if you got this incredibly sort of... I think you'd almost want to take this chancer, who you think is also a little dense, in his way. But when you put that next to someone who's incredibly like lost, like a lost soul, like it's like this sort of, she shouldn't even be in a human body, then that dynamic could actually be quite interesting. Like he's trying to take him under his wing constantly, trying to make him the boyfriend. Instead of being like, oh, I hate your boyfriend, he's trying to make him the boyfriend that he knows his sister needs.
Yeah, I like that. Or
so
wants.
That's their dynamic. Or wants,
needs, yeah. I like that. That's good. That's a good dynamic. And when is this showing? What time of the week? Is it a weekly thing? Is it?
I think. Do you remember a show called It's called Lovesick now, which is on Netflix, because Netflix sort of buys some of the wayward TV shows. But when it was on Channel 4, it was called, and this is probably, and I'll be honest with you, the greatest title. I wish that we'd had this for SlashDupe. It's called. Let me tell you the premise first. It's about a guy who. Now I can't remember the premise exactly. It's about a guy who has a sexually transmitted disease that's not serious, but it can be serious for women if it's, sort of left unchecked. So he has to go through his sexual history and contact each of his previous girlfriends. And in doing so, you get a cool sort of flashback to their relationship and why it failed. And he learns that it's his fault for most of them, and he grows as a person. But the title is called Scrotal Recall.
Amazing.
Which is probably
just
the best.
Amazing.
I mean, it's just the best title. And then they changed it for Netflix. But I think it's that sort of show that hinges on a load of great ideas, but Channel 4 puts it out at 9 o'clock at night, doesn't promote it, and then you find it.
That's a prime time slot, 9 o'clock, man.
I guess so. On a Monday then. And
Okay,
then
fine.
9 o'clock on a Monday, and then they don't promote it properly, and it doesn't go onto E4 the way it should, or not E4, 4OD the way it should. And then Netflix pick it up, and it doesn't even garner enough success then to get a second season. That's when it gets a web series.
Love it.
But yeah, I think it's sort of an unusual time slot where they try and bury it a little bit. But everybody who watches it knows it's got potential. You know, it was so
one
much
of those
potential.
Yeah, one of those loved hits that never quite took off, and it's a cult classic.
Yeah. So that's my idea for, or I would say it's mine, but we've had 3 wonderful anecdotes from Dan about seafaring.
Who knew?
Who knew? And the rest of it is basically everybody else's ideas about elevating the material for key workers. But that's the SlashDupe collective idea for key workers.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I wasn't proud of it when I came up with the concept yesterday, but I'm incredibly proud of it now. I'm quite happy. And now's also a good time to note that I'm not going to be a moderator, because obviously it's unfair, but because I picked my idea. But no, I wouldn't. I'm not going to moderate or pick a winner or anything to go forward, and that's probably the best thing to do. But we'll leave it open to. We've got a Reddit and we've got a Twitter that we follow, and we're on there quite regularly, especially now. And we're happy to chat to anyone who wants to log on. And we've got a Facebook group as well. And we will leave it to anyone who is listening to give us their votes. And also, if you think about it, if you jump on and vote somewhere, let's be honest, probably only going to get 2 or 3 votes. So yours is probably going to be quite a significant vote.
Yeah,
if you're the only person
of
who
the
votes,
vote, you're going to do well.
And we'll name and shame you for picking the worst of 3 terrible ideas.
Now people aren't going to vote anymore.
And so we'd love a bit of interaction. I mean, we're all in lockdown, we're all isolated, so let's get a bit of conversation going. So tell us your winner at the end of this. Jump online, and we'd be happy to discuss it at the start of the next recording.
The word that Sean gave me to do with the keywords of this sort of pandemic was social distancing, which I think is quite a tough one. And surprisingly, unsurprisingly maybe, I've sort of got it yesterday and I've drawn loads of notes. So it's a new ground for me to actually be given a title ahead of time, seeing as I've duped all the other ones. And it's going to be quite interesting to go through this. But social distancing.
This is why we give you the dupe, Ryan, because otherwise you show us all up.
Yeah, with your wealth of research and prep, which we don't do any of.
Well, thank you very much. So I came up with the idea of social distancing, a film set in New York, and it's going to be centered around a woman who all her life has been part of many, many different social clubs. So I'm talking like LARPing, book club, pole attack, yoga, aerobics, singing, anything you think you can do an after work activity. And this woman's life is loaded with it. So she literally, and this probably is because when she was a kid, she was like a pageant kid. And then when she went into school, she was in the book club and what's the sort of yearbook club. And then when she went to college, did all these things. So she all her life. And because of that, so that when I went to uni, the people who did best coming straight out of uni were the ones who didn't go out partying and drinking, were the ones who took summer jobs, who volunteered, so that they built up 3 years worth of basic experience on their CV, and then came
basically who didn't enjoy university.
I didn't do either. I didn't go out partying and drinking.
You
and
sat
I didn't
in
do
your
any
room playing Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
you did, isn't it?
But it's paying off now, with the remake.
So because of that, she's probably got herself a very high profile job fresh out of college, probably like facilities management. I think that's sort of, so yeah, she's so, and in all of these clubs, she's like the treasurer and the buyer and the person that arranges everything. And her schedule is literally, like get up, brush teeth, take this train, it's like every single minute of her life is planned out, but she likes it that way. It's not like she's doing it because of some sort of thing. And she loves being in all these different social clubs. I think it would be interesting. So what I was thinking is we've got such reliance, I'm going to call you out on this, Sean, but Sean's got about 7 different calendar apps, everything's in there. And I actually do it now. I put everything in my phone. Whenever someone says something, I don't write in a paper calendar or anything like that. Everything's on my phone. When going on directions, Dan, do you even have an A to Z in your car anymore?
Not anymore, no.
Because we've just got Google Maps. You don't need to learn roads and learn sort of ways around, even walking in the streets, in London. So I like the idea of this woman, she does really enjoy her life, but she, one day, I don't know how, but maybe her phone either just completely stops working, or it gets knocked into, like, she's at a subway platform and it gets knocked and it smashes, or train runs it over or something like that. Her entire life is in that phone.
Yeah, and maybe she has can I just throw in there, maybe she has a quick decision to make. It's either get the phone or do something else. And it's almost like a sliding door scenario. The choice to leave the phone to be destroyed is, while a difficult one, allows her to choose a secondary option. Well,
I think want it to happen. I didn't want it to be like, a woman gets robbed or something like that, And maybe you like the idea of the phone just like it's some kind of supernatural force or something like that.
The Chinese are using the 5G masts,
of course, yeah,
to destroy
the idea of sort of maybe just getting bumped and it falling as the train sort of coming by, so she doesn't have the opportunity. And maybe so when she does that, she then she breaks down crying because her entire life, everything, every single club where she has to go, everything that is on that phone. And this other woman, I've written the zany one, but I don't think that's really a term that anyone uses anymore.
Zany
really.
is very 90s, Phoebe-esque phrase, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is, isn't it? But that is the sort of... So she starts crying on the platform, and the zany one comes and consoles her and is like, hey, you're doing okay, what's wrong? She says, smash the phone, I've got to go to this class or whatever. And she goes, oh, I know where that is, I'll take you. And so they get on the train, and then the train gets delayed as well, so she can't actually make the club. And she's like, well, I don't know how to get home, because her entire life, her entire reliance has been on this device, on the phone. That she's like, well, I'll take you. And we sort of have like a beginning of a friendship, a sort of like 2 chalk and cheese sort of people, one that's incredibly busy at ranging and one that is just like, a flower girl. I think basically what they do is on their way home, she takes her home and she explains to her, like, we sort of have a supercut of her going like, and I do this club, and I do that club, and I do this, and I do that, and I do this, where they're like... And she's like, what do you do after work? She's like, I just sort of, I live life. I just go with the flow, It doesn't actually thingy. And I think she says to her, look, maybe it's a good thing that your phone is gone. Like, maybe it's a good thing. And then just as she's about to go, she goes, oh, no, I don't know how to get to work.
Right. Yeah.
And so this girl's like, well, look, I'll meet you here tomorrow morning and I'll take you to work. And she's like, cool. So then this is where her life begins to. So she hasn't got a phone, hasn't got an alarm, doesn't wake up on time, doesn't check the style blogs to see what she should be wearing that day. It's all crazy. Runs downstairs and the flowery girl is there. And she's like, why didn't you wake me up? She's like, no, I thought you needed a lion, right? Takes her to work, and then for some reason her building's being fumigated or something like that. She's a facilities manager, should have known that, but because she didn't have on her phone to remind her.
But there's a positive outcome to that somehow.
Right, so she's like, So she says to this other woman, she's got the rest of the week off, and then they go to like the Apple store or whatever, and there's a new phone being launched, so they can't actually, because the queue's around the corner.
Yeah, sure.
I can't get you another phone for another week, basically, right?
Yeah,
She's like, so the other girl's like, well, look, why don't you don't need any of those clubs, any of those social clubs, like they can run themselves. Why don't you live a life? Why don't you walk a mile in my shoes? Maybe she gives her shoes or something stupid like that. She's like, why don't we just like, just live like me, we'll hang out, we'll experience the world in a way that you've never seen before because it's not all regimented. And basically, if you hate it, I will join every single one of the clubs that you are part of.
Interesting.
Or if you want to see life my way.
Yeah.
And it's just about the sort of the way that they do stuff together. So they'll just, go to the park. And I think it's the fact that she has the skills that she's got from going to all these clubs to the Ada in real life. They go to a karaoke bar and she like absolutely smashes it, like puts on the showmanship because she's in the singing class and from that she like knows the songs. Everyone really loves her, like plays.
She's only ever done sort of regimented singing before, right? In the club.
Yeah.
So it's very regimented. It's very sort of...
And the dancing, her dancing is so like it's all to routine, and so the girl's very like flowy about it.
And doing it like at the karaoke, she like...
But she's been learning these skills and never actually seen she's never actually had to put them into
just
practice.
doing all of these.
Do you know what I mean?
These
Just the
classes.
doing.
And things like, someone's preaching in a park and then she's just like, well, actually, hold on a minute. What you're saying is wrong. And because she's read it in book club, like, someone's explaining why Machiavelli's the greatest person in the world. And she's like, no, because of this, like that. And, she gets all of the skills that she's learned, like plays ultimate frisbee because she's really athletic because of all the yoga and stuff like that. Like, and I think just the idea of her actually beginning to like live her life, not having to worry about work because it's getting fumigated and all that stuff, and just sort of realizing that all these sort of skills that you learn, and you can shove yourself in loads of social clubs, but you can't be that regimented about your life. She starts waking up later. It's sort of like a mix between I Love You Man and that bit like Stranger Than Fiction as well. I think the second time
where you sort of like disconnect from the path that you think that you've set for yourself or that has been set for you.
And I like the idea of sort of one time she's expecting the flowery girl to like appear at her door, and when she answers her intercom, it's one of every person from all the social groups she's in. Like, so there's like, I don't know, like someone in the knitting group, in the book club, like someone dressed like a Viking for the LARPing club, and they're all at her door, and she's just like, she comes downstairs and they're all like, where are you? We thought you were dead, all this stuff, da, da, da. And she just sort of stops them all. She's like, listen, like I've understood how I'm not gonna do it. So one way or another, I'm gonna basically, she's like, Jeff, you're going to be the new, raiding party leader of the barbarians, and you, Sarah, you're going to do this. And she basically sort of hands off all her responsibilities off to people.
So when we see the clubs at the start, you see how there are people who are equally talented and equally driven as she is, but like just not able. Perhaps there are a lot of people. I was reading a book recently called Quiet. About introverts, and it's a really fascinating book about how those people are often the people who stay quiet and receive information. Not necessarily all quiet people, but certain introverts, when they're listened to, are more powerful because they've taken in more information instead of just delivering information. So I think there were these people in her clubs that she then passes the torch on to.
Yeah, and she's sort of given all that when she's given all the speech, and then she sees like the other girl there, and then they're like, well, what are you going to do? And she's just like, I'm just going to go with the flow. And that's sort of like the nice sort of ending moment. And I don't really want this to be like... Okay,
listen, it has to be called Go With The Flow, and it's FLO, and the girl with the flowery hair is called Flo.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And plot twist, the flowery girl ends up being the CEO of the company that she's in.
Yeah.
Well, I've written something like that. Like she is.
Well, she's the CEO of a big company that wants to bring her on.
A massive company.
It's
Well, I have written that down. That I like.
They're just about to merge her with.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's just someone
that.
She's just someone that sort of is taking in. And I don't want this to be a sort of film that's like, oh my god, I'm in my 30s. Like I've lost out on everything because my life's been so regimented. Like no, it's not. Like some people are really happy. Just sort of living life. They don't have to live by some sort of code.
Do you know the crux for me that I find makes it unique, as what you're saying, you don't want it to be too cliche, is that they it's that the skills that she's learning she's not utilising and not showing to other people in the real world. And I think
that's all. Yeah, and that's the loss, isn't it?
That's something I haven't seen.
It's not that she's doing it.
Yeah,
she's not sharing it.
And I know. I mean, I have a friend of mine, dear friend, who collects skills, I suppose you could call them, right? It's not even collecting hobbies, it's collecting skills. So she'll get very skilled at something, but then before she has time to really sort of, I don't know, show that to anyone or prove it to anyone or even to master it, she'll move to another skill. And I feel like that sort of, she's very happy, but I feel like that sort of, in this film, you could utilise the aspect of, sometimes it's wonderful to share those things, those skills that you've learned.
Like Rachel Weisz in Brothers Blue.
Yeah. So I'm getting those vibes, definitely.
And are we looking at like bridesmaids kind of area in terms of not necessarily casting, but in writers and in terms of style?
Yeah.
Or we're going like Devil Wears Prada.
I've got Nancy Myers down as a director. Did The Intern and sort of that. And I like that sort of, bright pastel colours, New York, that sort of thing, that sort of summer vibe to it. I can't remember what's the one with the girl from 50 Shades of Grey where she moves to New York, like that sort of style. So I've got Nancy Myers down. I've got Brigga Heelan as the sort of the main, as Flo. Let's call her Flo.
So what has she been in? Because I don't.
So Brigga Heelan, she was in a TV series called Great News. She was in Love. She played like the one from the witches in the first season. She played one of the witches that he sleeps with. But she's sort of quite good. She strikes like a line between being like quite commanding but being quite funny as well. Quite of like a physical comedy person.
Brigga
Heelan.
Brigga Heelan.
And I think to play the other girl,
the main character,
to play the other girl, I've got Miel Brado. So she's a podcaster, but she was a Vine star basically, but she's sort of got this real good energy about her. It's really sort of cool, floaty New York energy about her. She produced Euphoria, the TV series.
All right.
She's sort of like quite in touch, quite young.
So she'll be able to deviate from the strict sort of Nancy Myers sort of formula to bring a little bit of an edge to it that elevates it slightly.
Bit of Zoomer to it.
Yeah,
bring a bit of Zoomer to it. But I sort of like the idea of that casting, I think
we've got to have the girl from Euphoria in it, the one from Zendaya. Got to have her in it.
Yeah,
Zendaya, however you want to pronounce it. And you've got to have the girl from. I watched 8th Grade the other day, Bo Burnham's 8th Grade, and she is absolutely stunning as an actress. She's phenomenal. So if you need a young character in there, a young actress in there, you've got to have her.
I think the end of it, how I sort of saw the end of the film, it was like she does like when she gets her phone back. Like in the post, she opens up, does the transfer, and she's got like loads of messages, all this stuff, and she's like going to delete them, and she's like, no, actually that's stupid, like I'm not going to do that. So she spends all night, she reads them all, and she gets like a big chart, and she marks off basically the social things that she doesn't, can spend some free time. She like goes to the club at one point, and where they're dancing for that, meets a guy, goes back, so she gets to date him, and like she gets that. She maybe picks up some other sort of maybe she does like pottery with this other girl.
Can I also throw in that I think that she should find a way to merge. So the clubs are also very acerbic. Some of them are very small, and some of them are very segregated. So when they all come to her door, one of the outputs to that is that she manages to combine a few clubs. So there's like the LARPing Pottery Club or the
LARPing pole dance.
Exactly, the LARPing pole dancing club. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's that's a great idea.
So the karaoke and the pole vaulting club.
But I think I like the idea of that, and that being a sort of the idea of maybe letting go of technology, letting go, because it's also our reliance of using your phone for everything. Not writing stuff down, and being able to, what's the like stop and smell the roses. Sometimes you do have to just sort of step away from it all, or be able to just do something that you can go like, fuck it, the amount of times I've just been like, actually, mate, I will come to your gig tonight, or you going to a club tonight, might hang around with you. I hung out with people on nights out when all my friends have gone home, and I've just met some people, and I've been like, do you guys mind if I hang with you? And I've had amazing nights and stories with them, and you sort of build
like structure's important, but building a false structure or structures that you don't sort of need to adhere to exactly. I thought we can fall into the traps of that. I think definitely
very appropriate for this current time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
I thought of trailer music. I thought of some trailer music, which would definitely be like an upbeat version of Chasing Cars by Snow Patrol, just because at the end you'd have like the bit where it's like If you lie
Don't
with,
sing it, remember?
No, I'm not going to. If you lie with me and just look at the world, and then it'll be like social distancing.
Yeah, I like
it'd have that bit of sort of letting go and the jump cuts of all that. And definitely a poster would be 2 calendars side by side, one with writing all over it.
That's a great poster.
8 a.m, 9 a.m, doing that, all the stuff like a full calendar,
with,
and
Love
then
Life,
and the next one literally I've written Love Life, just written across the whole of the month.
Yeah,
and
that's great. That's great. That's worth the entire pitch. And I think, okay, just as you're talking, the main character's called Flo. The flowery character's called Rose. So if you wanted to go with the title, Smell the Roses, or if you wanted to go with the title, go with the flow, because these things change in different territories, so you have the freedom to do it.
There we go. And that's the sort of, because it's not really social distancing about staying away from people, but it's just sort of maybe taking a step back for yourself and living yourself, and then, being able to let others flourish around you as well.
Yeah, that's a genuinely great idea.
Brilliant.
And much better. We should give you more time to come up with your ideas, actually, I think. You're hoisted by your own petard. Dupe no longer.
No, I love being the dupe, though.
But yeah, thanks, Ryan. That was a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so you gave me the hashtag lockdown, which was the classic, and Ryan got really sad when I jumped up and grabbed that one, because there's so many obvious things, isn't there, like a prison lockdown or even... But I wanted to try and get away from our current situation, the idea of locking down being sort of clamped in and that sort of claustrophobic feeling. So I played in my head with a couple of puns or whatever, and I thought maybe what about locks, as in Scottish locks. And turns out there's actually a lock called Loch Doon. And I kid you not.
Brilliant.
So the title of this film is Loch Doon, and it stars David Tennant and Imelda Staunton.
Mm-hmm. Great cast.
Of course it does.
Yeah, of course it does. And it's a story about a grandson taking his grandmother back to Loch Doon. And it's kind of a character film where we're analysing there. So it's a little bit more serious, I think, than our last two. But I think maybe, as I was thinking through Ryan's, I can see how his head works in the dupe thing. Is that maybe he's not biologically related to the grandmother, or at least we find this out. So that maybe he's Scottish, but she isn't, if that makes any sense.
Interesting, okay.
And he's taking her back to Loch Doon, or maybe she's Scottish and he isn't, or by genetics or whatever. And they're going back to find like a family tree type thing. I don't know. That's all I've got. Actually, yesterday all I had was Lockdown. I didn't even know there was a Doon. So Lockdown, and it had Imelda Staunton and David Tennant, and that was it.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of sort of these big expansive shots and like just a real quiet film. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. I mean, it's sort of, I'm getting Philomena vibes purely because I think that was quite a sensitive sort of film, wasn't it? With like some nice sort of it allowed the character to breathe, I think, in that film. And I sort of secretly like the idea of one of them knowing explicitly that the other one's not related directly, and the other person knowing but not telling the other person. So if that makes sense, it's like when the reveal occurs, the other person who is supposed to have not known says, well, yeah, I mean, I did know that, but that doesn't matter. You know, this sort of idea of... You know.
Yeah, and maybe it's this family lie that the grandmother's been... Maybe she's taking him. Maybe she's taking him towards sort of the... Maybe it's where she's going to retire or to settle down towards the sort of the ender years of her life, where she's like starting to slow down and enjoy herself. And and maybe they've lived with this lie that he's adopted or something like that, but he's kind of knows and or at least suspected.
Yeah, and when it's not revealed, it's not a big
deal. And it doesn't bother him.
Yeah,
it's a big deal for her. That's why she's got him specifically to take him up. And they learn so much about it. But it's not a big deal.
Can I make a suggestion? Well, there's a lot of these like Ancestry, a lot of these DNA things where you put a swab in your mouth and you send it off. 23andMe, I think, is one of them, not a sponsor.
Yet.
But so it connects you with people that it thinks are your third and fourth cousin and whatever like that. So it's all based on the DNA profiles. There's also, I think they found like a serial killer through it as well, which is quite interesting because of DNA matching. But maybe that's one of these things. Someone does it and they get maybe she was an estranged child from the family or something like that, and that's why she has been taken back to Lochdoon because it's like there's a manor there or something, or that's where her family's ancestral home is or something like that, and that's why they're being taken. And it's originally found out because someone buys her one of these DNA kits or someone does one or something, and it turns out that actually this is what her lineage is, and she never knew it because she was taken away from that family when she was young.
Yeah, there are lots of routes to go down.
So we're ostensibly going there because she's taking this DNA test and we're going to go and find out about her lineage, and he's going with her to take her, and she's happy that he's coming because they're part of the same lineage, but there's also this thing that he actually isn't part of this lineage, but he's okay with that. Do you know what I mean? And maybe, she bequeaths the deeds to this house to him by the end of it and whatever, and it becomes no longer that manor name, it becomes his name. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I like it, and I think it's sort of. Have we done any googling on Lochdoon? What does it sort of? Should we all furiously Google it?
It's actually quite a big body of water.
There'll be the sounds of googling as we do this, and also probably
but it's
the
down,
sounds
as far as I remember, it's a little bit below Glasgow, sort of Dumfries, just out towards the southwest of.
Oh, it's lovely, and there's a lovely castle apparently as well, like a castle, like an old sort of dilapidated.
Yeah, so it's in Carrick, it looks like a beautiful place to film as well. Do you know what I mean? And there would be, I imagine, other peripheral characters, but it's ostensibly a two-hander for the entire film, a real chance for both of those titans to get their teeth into it.
I watched Upright recently, which is with Tim Minchin, and it gets a similar thing. It's the two of them travelling across Australia for their reason, but you're right. There are a lot of people who come in at roadside cafes, at people camping, so you can have that similar thing as you're saying as they're making the trip up. I assume they'd probably be coming up from somewhere down south, probably on the south coast maybe, so it makes it like a nice long journey, probably Brighton, and being able to meet all those people in all those little places. I assume when they get to Lochdoon, they'll be like the old boy fishing who's been fishing here for loads of years or whatever, and knows the family name or something like that. You get your gas station workers and your 80s hoodlums.
Yeah, I'm just imagining them going on walks just throughout the sort of the Highlands and their interaction, and maybe their talk about their family history, and maybe the parents aren't alive anymore. Maybe she's his only surviving relation on that side of the family, and she talks about her daughter. Then they're running around Lochdoon, who is his mother. And I did air quotes again for anyone, obviously, because we're on Zoom. And so there's all of that, but as we're going through the family history and her memories, which she's trying to relive, as we're getting towards the twilight years of our life, we like to remind ourselves and actually pass those stories on. And he's really willing to hear those stories because he never really heard them about his parents. But she keeps having to edit it ever so slightly so that he doesn't, she keeps the clues away from him, if that makes any sense. Or she doesn't. Every now and again there's a thing and she catches herself, and do you know what I mean? And then he can tell her stories about his mother, who she may have fallen out from. I don't know. It feels like it's a character duologue of epic proportions of just stories.
But you also in many ways, you can also let the landscape do the talking. I find it's very, you find these films that come out every so often, and they're very, they obviously have lots of great dialogue and actors in it, but just a look or the distance between them or the background where they have a conversation. That's everything empowers the dialogue, not just what they're saying, right?
Absolutely,
I understand what you're saying.
What about she wants to make a lap around the lock, and then around as they're walking, they get to tell stories, they get to meet different people. You know, I mean, I don't know how it's laid out, but you know, you could have a little country pub somewhere. I said old boy fishing. You know, when I went hiking in the US, everybody loves to stop for a chat. Everybody, and you know, finding out that we were English and they wanted to chat more, and you know, we ended up chatting to a guy whose family were English and lived in a town not far from Oxford where my friend lives.
Yeah.
You know, so just you know, didn't have that family connection, but it just was that close. And you think, you know, you're so many years away, years away, and distance away.
Yeah.
And you have that connection.
So what I find interesting, so that's fascinating because that's very emblematic of America as well, particularly. And what I think is sort of quite interesting about Scotland is the sparsity is almost the opposite of that, isn't it? So it's like we have our Bob Disposal film, for anyone who's long-time listeners.
Robbed. I was robbed.
You know, from and in Bob Disposal you have that, because that's across America, the journey, road trip across America, and you have lots of different personalities interacting. But I can see this being a film that's very, very personal between two people and very solitary.
Yeah. Okay.
And particularly being in, I mean, a lap around the lock is a fantastic idea, and I like that. Maybe the third act or the end of the second act or something. Every part of the lock is different from a different perspective, and I think that's wonderful. But they meet very few people, or when you do meet people, it's just a very, you know, a curt nod or a polite sort of wave of the hand, and that's enough of a dialogue between people in the sticks. You know, people who want their solitude because that's why they're there. So I feel like you can do something different with this film. Definitely, you can have the types of conversations that you feel you want in the film, but you can have them in a way that is without words. And I know that sounds a bit pompous, but you can...
I really like that. The idea of it being shot in the Highlands was that it gives us this sort of solitude, this space, this vast expanse, and that is, you know, that is shown in them. So maybe there's the vast expanse between them, but as we get towards the end, like you say, they're walking closer to each other, we're finding more intimate places to shoot that, which then goes in that third act, the whole lap of the lock, which expands out again because they're encompassing their entire family or their lineage and so what have you. I really like that.
And what I love about, I mean, I was thinking, I visited my nan the other day, obviously with a 6 foot, 2 metre sort of radius around her, and was very cautious and cleaned my hands lots. But she's got, before the lockdown, she's very intimate, she's very close, but she's goofy about it, because I think as you get older, there's a goofiness to her, to the way she'll hug and kiss, and it's with... I can't explain it. It's very unusual. I don't know if anybody else has this, because I only have one surviving grandmother, but I think there's a goofiness to her intimacy, right? And of course, intimacy when she was young is different to intimacy when she was older, and intimacy different as she's old now, and different with grandchildren, different with children, different with... So I just find that a very endearing trait. So I think the intimacy of travelling with an older person is interesting to explore as that evolves. It's a very unique intimacy in my experience. I don't know if it is for anyone else, but like, there's just for a woman who's so austere and sort of like very sort of prim and proper, there's a lovely sweet goofiness to her.
Yeah, and I think Imelda Staunton would utterly bring both of those things. Yeah. And I'd love to see David Tennant in a part where he's not severe.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Where he... And it doesn't have to be massively intense. This is something that lets him free up and we can enjoy the fun side. But also the really intimate and sort of gentle side of it. So
yeah, he's often sort of on both sides of the spectrum, isn't he? He's either quite sort of, he's either with his serial killer eyes, or he's got this sort of exuberance, and you can find this sort of reality sort of focus and narrow him down. Yeah.
So that's Loch Doon.
I love it. And I have a director in mind if you don't have a director in mind.
Oh, no, go for it.
I met this guy in a class a long, long time ago. His name's Tim Barrow, and he's just released a trailer for his new film, Riptide. And he did a sort of no-budget feature set... He's a Scottish director. He did a no-budget feature set in Scotland called The Space Between, which you can probably find on DVD. But Riptide has been a long time in the making, and he just released the trailer, and it's nice to see... his work, and I think you want someone who's on the the cusp of their career who has something very personal to say, which I think he's that sort of director. So I just want to shout out to Tim Barrow, because I think he's the sort of guy who could, if you were looking for...
Take it on.
Yes.
Hey, if you want to do it, you've got the pitch there.
Yeah, you've got 3 willing writers. Yeah. All with 3 completely different ideas about what it should be like.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's
perfect.
We'll make it work.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Dan. That's a great idea.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks everyone. That was our special isolation episode of Slash Dupe, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. It's good to hook up with you guys, and it's wonderful to sort of to get together digitally and sort of still have our fun, regardless of whether there's anyone listening on the other end. It's just good to do something and to be together.
That's true.
So thanks, Dan, for lockdown.
Oh, just a pleasure.
Wonderful idea. Thank you for social distancing, Ryan.
It's okay, no problem. And thank you for key workers.
Thank you very much. And I think we want to say a big shout out and thank you, not only to anyone who is doing their part, like genuinely, I mean, you've heard all the slogans by now, just by staying at home, you're saving lives. Like, we just want to thank everyone for their sort of patience and camaraderie and everything. But most importantly, we want to thank the key workers. And I know we thank them on a Thursday with a clap, but we just want to give them a round of applause now, just to sort of thank you to the key workers. So we're hoping to improve our ability to connect with others remotely. We're hoping to bring you some more of these episodes. So find people who are free and able and willing to pitch in. So hopefully we'll be able to bring you some more regular episodes of Slash Dupe during the lockdown. In the meantime, we have one from the archive featuring Bradley Kershaw that we recorded just before the lockdown went into effect. So we'll pop that out for you guys at some point. So that will have the quality of and the sort of the business of having everybody in the same room, and then from then onwards we'll be
the brave new world.
Zoom.
The brave new world.
So hopefully you'll stick with us during this, and any suggestions you can give us we're more than welcome. Any feedback, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Share it with your friends. Get them out. We can all be listening to podcasts now. This is the time to be listening to
definitely
pitches of films you always wanted to make.
And remember, at the end of this whole thing, we pick a winner. It goes into the finals, and we pick a winner that we actually make into an actual film trailer that we will all be making together.
One thing from me, if you know anyone who is like a film critic or is in the industry, we'd love to sort of have them come on, do a special to judge all of the entries that we've had so far.
Yeah, we're looking for semi-finals. During semi-finals, we want an adjudicator, someone who is in the film industry or the TV industry or any sort of media industry or has a vested interest in,
knows films.
What we're doing. Yeah. Or just knows films, perhaps better than us.
Just a person.
Yeah, just anyone, please.
Anybody.
We're really lonely.
Yeah, an adjudicator would be good to just maybe help see a professional eye from the way that the stuff that we've been putting out. If you know anyone, we've got our social channels, link them up, get them involved, and we can put out a personal email address as well so that you guys can get in contact with us if you don't feel like reaching out on the socials either.
And we just want to say, stay safe, look after each other, stay sane, do whatever you need to stay sane, to stay safe, and we'll see you on the other side.
Recorded in the Capo Studios 2020. What's up, danger?